Hardy, Arkansas, home of Spring River, this is Ridge Runner Reports, a podcast that will help clear the white noise in medicine and politics and help you to find the forest from the trees. Direct from Ridge Runner Studios, here is your host, Big Dave Ezel.
Good Saturday morning, everybody. How are y'all doing today? Today is Saturday, April the 30th, 2022. Now, since you're listening today, guess what? You've made it to episode 10 in this season. 7 full episodes and 3 special broadcasts. When I was trying to figure out how to get into podcasting, the Redonda Vault verdict was released. So it basically started from there. I had done some previous episodes on YouTube, trying to get my feel of how it worked on the digital media side, and especially the video media side, the vlogging side of podcasting. Then I submitted my stuff and got a channel. Got me a podcast going on Spreaker's platform. They're my host platform. It's been fun with them. They've taught me a lot. Going from YouTube back in November to about 25, I think it's probably 26 different platforms right now. It's been an eye-opening experience with some of this. I've learned a lot, and that's what life's about, keeping learning. The most fun with this is I've met people from all over this country through emails and social media messaging. I've got a huge following overseas. I don't know if it's the accent, but I'm going to take this minute for all of my listeners in Europe, the Scandinavian countries, Australia, and Russia. I really appreciate y'all taking the time to download and listen to my podcast. Now my podcast is being translated into about 8 major languages right now, all over the world. I had a download today from the country of Singapore. But by having this and having these followers from overseas, even Canada, what I'm seeing is that this nursing problems that everybody's having and we're having to deal with isn't just limited to the United States. It's happening all over the world. The medical delivery system's different in all the countries. The one thing we all have in common is the Hippocratic Oath. Everything that was going on that we're talking about in this was going on prior to the pandemic. Then we had a ton more trouble during the pandemic. And now that we're in this, I guess we'll call it post-acute phase of a pandemic, and I use that term loosely. But what happened and what's happening now and what's going on now is the dirty laundry's being aired. People are getting an insight into the medical field that they had no idea how this was run. They had no idea this is how people thought, and people are shocked. I get a few emails here and there from people out in the real world that work with medical facilities, not actually for medical facilities, saying they're seeing the entire attitude, the entire system change right in front of their eyes, and it's surreal for them. But it's time, really. It's time that nurses started being heard about what we're going through. It's time nurses start standing up and fighting for what they believe and standing their ground and drawing a red line in the sand and telling the government and telling the owners and these private corporations to get bent. It's time for these corporate conglomerates and CEOs and CFOs and COOs and all of these dictators of nursing, directors of nursing, that don't have any regard for anybody else other than themselves, making sure all of their shifts are covered, and then going home and taking the credit for everything that's going on in their house. This is the kind of stuff that we're going to be talking about today. But before we even get started good, let me go ahead and get this out of the way. Let's tell you that Rock and Magnolia Customs has made me one of the best 20-ounce tumblers with a handle on it. There's not a day that's gone by that I hadn't used this tumbler. It's really, really good. Go check out their website and do it.
Do you have a friend or family member you're having trouble buying a gift for? You just can't find the right gift for the person who has everything? Then go to Rockin' Magnolia Customs, a place where you can pick out and design the perfect gift for that special someone. That's rockinmagnoliacustoms.com, or find them on Facebook at Rockin' Magnolia Customs.
Thank you, Amy. I appreciate you sponsoring my show. It's been a real pleasure to work with you through this series. I hope that you'll continue to work with me. I really enjoy the camaraderie, and I get to bounce ideas off of you since you're also a fellow nurse creator. So let me get the white elephant taken care of. If you saw my post this week, you know that people are trying to take me down, take my podcast off, because it's quote unquote giving a bad viewpoint to the people out there trying to find them some medical facilities. Well, they need to know what they're going in for. And I'm not talking about a medical procedure or an illness. I'm talking about you. I'm talking about the companies. I'm talking about the people that getting paid so many millions. Y'all have sent word through a couple of my podcast host services, or sites basically. You've had other individuals send emails, and when I go run their check against your company, I find it. I have people looker, so it's real easy to look these people up. I can tell if they're fake accounts or not. Y'all want me to stop doing what I'm doing. I'm not going to stop. In these days and times, you actually know when you're doing something good or you're doing something right and sincere is when people start trying to dox you and shut you up. They be woke. The woke culture is the biggest sham. They want to talk about disinformation all in the news. Everybody's not stupid. I mean, we know that all of the news media sites are lying, including Fox, Newsmax, OAN, all the conservative, quote unquote conservative news media sites. They have stuff on there and they give both sides, but then their personalities come on into what they're doing, and then they're going to get run off of their channels. I mean, if you want to see a prime example, Chris Wallace and Shepard Smith from Fox News took off. So I don't care. Your wokeness is now streamed over into healthcare, and that's going to absolutely destroy you. But here's what I hate to tell you, but the woke people are absolutely the most hateful human beings on earth. They diminish open, enriching political discourse. But the most harmful thing that the people who are woke do is reduce individuals with whom you don't agree with to nothing more than their social or political beliefs. You don't even want to get to know anybody to decide if you like them or not. Oh, they voted for the orange man. Okay, so I could say the same thing about you voted for a dementia-ridden president. But I don't, because there's more to you than that. There's two things you never discuss unless you know the person and know they're not going to get tore up about it, and that's politics and religion. And if folks will go back to living that rule, and the news media get it on there and saying a fire in a building caught downtown today, and leave it at that and praise the firefighters, and then go to the next story and do a lot of human interest stories, would probably be in a better shape. But I don't want to be woke. Do you want to be woke? I don't. Because I don't want to restrict all what little intelligence I have. I don't want it to be restricted, and I want to stay open-minded about things. I do want to be informed. I am passionate about what I do, but I do want to be informed. And you can't be informed if you just shut down your ears because you're quote unquote woke. You can't be an advocate beyond any political or social issue by being woke, because you don't offer anything. You don't bring anything to the table but your person. And that's no good. If you don't come with good ideas where people can sit and discuss it, then you're not worth the waste of breath, and then you're just a waste of carbon. I'm going to remain contently unwoke. I am staying that way. All of this came out this week. Elon bought Twitter, and everybody lost their minds. And I'm not talking about the normal people out there. I'm talking about these liberals. And I have had the most fun this week. I have trolled these members of Congress, both sides of the aisle. I have trolled former Democratic representatives. I have had a blast. Here's the funny part. I actually had a respondent to one of my tweets, and we actually had a discussion that was quite fruitful. I believe anything that comes out of it when I see it, but it was quite fruitful. And apparently, I knew I had like 3 followers on Twitter. I'll give y'all a little background. October 2 years ago, I lost my internet identity, I guess is the best way to put it. Facebook, my Gmail, I lost everything. Alphabet and Google, and Facebook and Twitter, which was all I was on at the time, all banned me. I've got back into Twitter, but I never had any more followers. Nobody was responding like they were to my tweets before. So I kind of figured I was being shadow banned, and I was. I was being banned, period. It just wasn't told that's what was going on. Then this past week, all of a sudden, I went up to 16, and then I started getting messages, old messages. So yeah, they were doing it. I didn't think I was doing any good with this podcast, but this past week's been real eye-opening for me. I'm realizing that what I'm saying is making a difference strictly because the people in the power that I've been talking about, but they really come out of the woodworks this past week when I talked about how the company owned a nursing home and also owned a welding company. Let me just say apparently that's happening a lot all over the country, because I was kind of not really shocked by it, but shocked by the response that one statement got. It said I didn't even have a foundation for it, and all I did was tell the woman in the email was, well, just go to Google and type in any keyword on any of my podcasts, and usually it'll be in the first 4 or 5. I said, and besides that, I can send you all of the links, because I save everything I do research in a link on a page. Because as I've done this, I've had to refer back to other articles to get the stuff situated right, to get get a bigger perspective. Because when one story comes out a couple of days later, one that further explains that first story comes out in another article. And I told him, I said, you can go to McKnight's, which is a long-term care publication, healthcare publication. The New York Times, Washington Post, Washington Examiner, USA Today, Time Magazine, Google search, DuckDuckGo search, Bing search, any of that stuff. It's usually within the first 4 or 5, and then you can read it and just determine if I'm wrong or not. I'll be happy to discuss anything with you, but for you to have a freedom of speech, that comes with some responsibility, because you also have you got a right to your free speech, but you also have a right to be stupid. You also have a right to be dumb. You also have a right to fall. And I can't help it if you try to demean me or my show by doxing me out, by trying to get me taken off of my podcast. That's just fine. I'm ready for you. The biggest problem you woke culture have is nobody's listening to your BS anymore. Now, I know there's still some woke people out there. I run into them, even in Arkansas. Even here where I live, there's woke people everywhere. Bless their hearts. But if you really want to understand what's going on, don't take any article that I've read about. Find you a nurse. Everybody knows a nurse. Or if you don't know a nurse, somebody you know knows a nurse. And then I want you to go up to them, and I want you to ask them, say, what is so bad that you have to juggle so much in an 8 to 12 hour shift? And then ask them, how many patients do you have to juggle? And what's their problems that make it so difficult? And you're liable to get an earful. I've watched nurses on this page on Facebook that I'm in. Man, buddy, we will attack each other in a quick minute. But nurses do that. It's how we communicate, I guess. But don't let somebody from the outside attack a nurse, because then we're all on them. People are starting to find out that the nurses like the mafia. And we are. We will stick together on some things. Our problem now is we have so many personalities that we can't stick together and stay that way long enough to get anything accomplished. That's changing. The public's problem is there's this perverted vision or version of nurses that they see on TV, and that's what they think it is. They think we've got these glorified patients that's laid up in a perfectly made bed with no seam showing, and it's folded back, and it's folded from the top, and the corner's bent down, and the pillow has a mint on it, and there are all these lines coming off of these patients, which half the time they're not right anyway, but they're all in a neat little order. That's the furthest thing from the truth there is. I love me some Jeff Dunham, but Jeff Dunham has a show called Controlled Chaos. Those two words explain nursing. I love my chaos. It keeps me on my feet when it's controlled. When it's not controlled, that's what we call the fecal show. Let me just say it. Hell, it's the 10th episode. We call that the shit show. And we'll normally tell people at Shift Change, welcome to the shit show. There's a few other things we call it, but that's the cleanest thing I can do without getting popped. Don't go with what's on TV. There's only been one episode of any medical show I've watched that was anything close to anything, and that was the very first episode of ER. Man, I got sweaty palms and everything when I first watched that. Chicago Hope was kind of the same way, but the first episode of ER, that was as close to an ER work as I've seen on TV like it is. I've had several people also ask me this week when I had to change everything over, hey David, what do you mean the forest from the trees? Well, there's a statement in the South that we use, and it says you can't see the forest for the trees. And that's actually true. But if you're way, way above it and looking down, you can see the forest. But in healthcare, all healthcare really is just a bunch of trees that's so intertwined amongst itself that it's creating this gigantic forest. These hospital corporations, whether they intend for it to be true or not, they only want you to see the forest. They don't want you to see the individual trees, because then they would have to answer questions. So what I try to do here is separate the forest from the tree. Because if you're just looking at the forest, you don't have questions. But if you're looking at the trees, you'll have a lot of questions. I've talked about, should healthcare workers have a mandatory mental health evaluation every year, and then prior to starting their job. And this week, as bad as I hate to say what I'm about to say, I was proven right. Wednesday, a nurse blew her brains out in the middle of her shift in the ER. I'm sorry to the family that this happened to. It should have not happened, but you can count that into one of the 18 per day medical personnel that's committing suicide a day. I mean, we're catching up with the vets, and they're at 22 a day. One is too many in either side. But what you need to understand is, even though nurses aren't military, the basic damage that PTSD or traumatic trauma or death and dying, whatever you want to call it, human nature is the same. So it does, the military sees a lot more crazy shit than we do, but the human experience is the same. The mind works the same. PTSD damages the brain different in every individual person that it's different in. Part of this stress and part of this comes from the facilities themselves, or the companies that own these facilities. We were taught how to cope somewhat. Okay, I'll just say it. This pandemic has caused more problems with nurses than any single individual thing, other than maybe a mass shooting at a school or something where the nurses that are there at that point have to deal with it. But it's real. I've talked on another episode about how the politics, how this don't get caught up in the propaganda or the white noise of politics when it comes to healthcare, because they're using it to push something else through, and I'd just be damned if I wasn't right again. He brought it up in the State of the Union. An invasion had occurred in the Ukraine. All this is going on in the world, and we need to be more focused on the world. I'm going to change health care in this country. We're going to focus on the nursing homes. Out of the blue. Nobody was expecting it. Everybody's shocked. But who's the first people to come on board and get behind these facilities? The facilities themselves and the AHCA. Now, this week they're talking about, well, we have to have more input from the owners. You don't need input from the owners because they're going to only fix it to where it benefits them and not anybody else. You're going to look at a mass walkout of nurses like I've never seen before, folks. I'm just being real about it. There's nurses that are quitting every day. We've already lost 500,000 nurses in the last 2 years, if not more. And you've got nurses leaving the bedside, going to work for insurance companies. They're going to work for CMS. They're going to work in survey units. They're going to work in ombudsman positions in these states. They're going to a desk job. They're not going to the bedside. The bedside's where nurses are needed right now. So if I'm trying to explain something to you, it's simply because I want you to understand what's going on here. And it's time. It's way past time nurses are heard for what the problem really is and not what they want the problem to be. I've made the statement before, and it stands true to this day. As long as these companies and these government officials are allowed to tell nurses, hey, it's the burnout talking. It's not burnout. Burnout makes it our fault. It's not our fault your facility is shitty. It's not our fault that you don't know how to run a building. It's not our fault that you're trying to make as much money as you can off of the backs of the people that actually give a damn in this country. If it's left up to the ownership of these corporations and it's left up to the directors of the buildings, these CEOs and these chairmen of the boards and CFOs and COOs and all of that, if it's left up to them, they would have it cut more. They would have your wages capped. You need to let economics take over the healthcare industry. It will fix it, but you all going to have to be nonprofits. Studies have shown nonprofits treat their patients better than for-profits. I suggest everybody find where your nonprofit facilities are, including nursing homes. They're usually religious-based organizations, but they're still nonprofit. The staffing modules are doubled, usually. There's more people in the building, so there's actually effective care taking place, whereas you get limited basic care right now in the hospitals. And if you're lucky to get basic care in a long-term care facility, if they don't know what they're doing when they're running the place. These companies, corporate greed is what's got everything screwed up in healthcare anyway, not to mention the politics, because I'm going to say it. Oh my God, I'd hate to know that our vice president or any of the representatives in Congress that weren't in healthcare make the rules for us. Well, that's what's happened. The American Care Act was the biggest crock of BS that's ever been passed in this country. It's a futile attempt to try to take over 20% of the gross domestic product. You know what they say, he who hath the money hath the power. If you've got control of the 5 basic sections of the gross domestic product in this country, and you've got control, you've basically got the power now. But in order to convince the public of that, you've got to withhold the most important thing to them is health care. Once you get control of that, then you can control the masses, right? I mean, you learn so well from your counterparts, and you learn so well from your Civil War that you had in our country. And you've learned so much from Bosnia and Herzegovina when they were having their civil war, how to turn people against each other and turn it from a regular war to a civil war and cause genocide. But you're letting nature take its course with America. Every person in America ought to be on the side of the nurses right now. The nurses' marches are going on this month. I wonder how many people are not nurses are going to go. The only drawback I see to these nurse marches is that they didn't invite the general public. They should have just had a healthcare march and invited everybody. Doctors, therapists, CNAs, housekeepers, dietitians, like everything. Everybody's affected by this crap. Everybody. And it's sad. All this in the medical field, I'm going to break it down for you now, folks. Let me tell you how this exactly works. And I'm going to use the long-term care model right now, the nursing home model, because it actually, in the hospital, it's on just a bigger scale. But it's the same everywhere. This patient comes into the nursing home. But before the patient has got to the nursing home, we get a report from an LTAC or a hospital. LTAC's long-term acute care. That's for the patients that needed a couple extra weeks antibiotics or whatever for the organism, or they needed to watch, or they were going back to surgery and they were in the LTAC and they had to go back to surgery 2 or 3 weeks later. They had to get their surgery and they come out of the LTAC 3 or 4 days till all the sedation's out of their system. Then they send them to a long-term care facility. So when they come to the long-term care facility, they're entered in. Day one, they're charged the whole 24 hours, whether they get there at 11:59 at night or not. The general rule is we always go by when they came in the facility. Well, it's not how they do it anymore, but that's still how they do it. And I'll explain that right now. So if they went into the ER at 1640, but the doctor didn't write orders till 2040, then 2040 is the time that they use. The nursing home, on the other hand, discharges them at 1640. This way, the payment for that day, because once they get to 1201, it's a 24-hour bill. But it don't matter if they leave. So we just discharge them out. The hospital, when they take them in, then they'll get paid from CMS. And they'll get 24 hours right then, too. Couldn't tell you how many times I've been in trouble waiting to admit somebody that got to my floor at 11:50 and waited at 12:01 to admit them into the unit. Oh, you got to go back and change your time. They're a late entry. No, I'm not. But a lot of nurses do. And then we come to find out that the insurance pays, let's take a random number, nursing home. Let's go $500 a day because everybody can kind of fathom that. So Medicare pays for the first 21 days. So you're getting $10,000 right off the bat. Now, your money increases for every time the CNAs chart that they helped them with their restroom, returned and changed them, or did any ADL care. And then, the medicines are back. Block charges, nursing hours are block charges, all that stuff works. But then they want you to chart everything that's going to capture the money. And that's smart business. I mean, that is smart business. And it's only smart business if you're giving it out to the people that created the revenue for you. And that would be the hospital staff as a whole, or the nursing home staff as a whole. But that's not what you're doing. You're taking the money away from the people that got you the money. And you've done it for years, and we've been content to let you do it for years. We're not content anymore. You have taken and taken and taken until there's nothing for us left to give. I did a podcast episode on the collapse of healthcare, and I said 18 to 24 months. I'm looking more now. I'm thinking more like 6 to 8 months, if not sooner. Now, if you got to go past that 20 days, and they've got a supplemental AARP policy or AMAC policy, or Prudential policy, or Colonial, or whatever. And they'll pay the copays after the 20th day in the nursing home, because the first 20 days are 100% reimbursed by CMS. On the 21st day, the copay comes from, that might be anywhere from $85 to $165. And that may be different now. Dollars a day from Medicaid, which is funded by Medicare grants. So it's the same money. And then the Medicare will pay the other 80%, let's say. 80-20 is the common denominator, I guess. So then they get up to 100 days. So 100 days, let's say 90 days. Let's use 100, it's easier to work with. So you're looking at, what, $50,000 per patient. Let's say your average daily census is 12. So 12 times 50. And they average that a month at minimum. 7, 8, 12. Anything like that. That's enough to keep your facility open based on the bed count. Not to mention all the other people that are paying in from Medicaid. When I say that, you might have 12 people making that kind of money, but then you've got 112 other people making the base rate from Medicaid or private insurance or private pay even. So they're rolling in dough. Don't ever think, if you ever hear these facilities are broke, it is a lie. There's too much money in healthcare. It's 20% of the gross domestic product in this country. So that tells me there is too much healthcare. Too much money involved in healthcare, and everybody's getting their piece of it. Now, y'all don't get mad. You CFOs and CEOs, y'all get mad. Fine. Get mad. But you can also get bent. And because I'm telling the truth. That's why you want me shut down. You're not doxing me because you think you woke. You dox me because you're scared the truth's getting out there. It's going to get out there whether I say it or not. And it is. We know that basics, average size nursing home, 120 beds, the executive director or the administrator or the CEO or CFO, whatever you want to call it, whatever title you want to give them, you're making 6 figures a year. We already know this. That's on your base salary. You're making 6 figures a year, but if you make a little save money on the staffing side, then you get the bonus. You get to keep what you save. Well, that means they're going to work it till there's nothing. Right? Well, what we're seeing now, and I'm going to flip now to the acute care side of what's going on. So these companies ran these travel agencies for unrealistic expectations of money for an extended amount of time due to the pandemic. Well, now they're cutting rates. Even I am shocked how fast they're cutting rates. And then they're cutting the rates, blaming it on the government. These companies are blaming, since they're going to a normalization. There is no more normalization, folks. You're going to see nurses walk out by the thousands in the next 6 months. They may not quit the field. It may be short term. But to you hospitals and you LTAC hospitals and you hospital rehabilitation centers, how you going to keep a floor open when the base of your staff members has to be nursing? Because you can't run a hospital without nurses. You can have everything else fully staffed. You can have doctors, but I don't see the doctors doing what we do. I wouldn't expect them to, really. I'd expect them to be able to write me the orders to get me the tools, but y'all are so micromanaging healthcare that you are limiting what they can and can't order, and you're basing everything on the cost of this and that, and then what kickbacks you get. No wonder the CEO of HCA made $51 million last year on bonus pays and incentives. $51 million, how many nurses would that paid for HCA? Instead of getting the crappy reviews from the nurses that they get all over the country. HCA's banner. Those are avoided facilities. Those are avoided facilities. And there's be nurses out there that, I had the best time there. No, you've had the best time. You chose to have the best time. You didn't have where you were told. You need to get out of my face. We don't do that here. We're not going to do that here. But it's not for me. It's for the patient. We're not doing it. Costs too much. Oh, okay. All right. That's kind of like these politicians that are fighting medical marijuana. You know why they're fighting medical marijuana? Because the drug lobby's making them fight medical marijuana. I'm not a major recreational user advocate. But if it works for you, and that's what you choose to treat your illness with, by all means, you go ahead. It's your body. My wife was diagnosed with cancer, and we used THC oils, lotions, creams, flowers. It was ingested any way I could get it into her to give her some relief. And that's what I did. And don't tell me, I can't stand when they try to tell you what you can and can't do with your own body for anything. All political issues, folks. I'm saying all political issues. Remember, the right for you to swing your fist ends where my nose begins. And that's with everything that we do in this field. I'm going to tell you that I felt the sting of this. By being focused, I guess I'm more popular than I thought I was. I'm a per diem traveler. That means I may be in Memphis today, Little Rock 2 days from now, Kansas City next week, a couple of days. I've even gone down as far south as New Orleans to do some shifts down there for those people. And visit my own family. But since I did my last episode and I redid the one that got taken down and I re-recorded it and posted it, I had worked the weekend after I posted the shift, and then I have not had a shift in 2 weeks. I am 2 weeks without a job. So far, no shifts. I've got shifts coming up next week unless they get canceled. But they've done a real good job of keeping me out. And the reason that I know that it's specific people doing it is because I submitted for other shifts. And I've tried to get the shifts off the other couple of per diem agencies I'm registered with. And I was denied on all 3 of them. And I didn't change the money. I didn't increase the bid or anything. I give what the recommended rate was. That's what I took. $24 shifts, folks. I requested 24 shifts over 14 days. Normally, you figure average 2 to 3 out of that amount. And that's usually enough to keep me going anyway. Well, 2 12-hour shifts is enough to keep me going. But I hadn't worked any. That's simply because I'm telling everybody how it works. Now, you've heard my editorial episode today. It's just random stuff, but I'm trying to stay focused on this right now. Here's a prime example of the forest from the trees. Here's a prime example of how healthcare really works. This is the part they don't want me to say out loud, because then it makes them have to deal with the issue they're going to have with it anyway. A hospital is usually owned by a bigger corporation, and they're only doing business as this hospital, or the hospital is the major corporation part, and they have all these underlings underneath them that they're all part of the same company. And now, you would ask me last week, somebody asked me, well, what does a welding company have to do with healthcare? Well, a welding company has to do with healthcare is that the welding company can get oxygen pre-packaged in small containers that get delivered to the nursing homes. Now, you have durable medical supply companies that deliver oxygen to the facilities, but they use the same welding company to get their oxygen from. The durable medical company that just ordered the oxygen from the welding company that's owned by the hospital is also owned by the hospital. And that durable medical equipment company next door to them has a nurse's uniform shop that they own, which is owned by the hospital corporation. And let's not forget the therapy departments. That's the biggest crock in healthcare. These therapy departments have these names that are great. Some of these therapy department names are awesome. But they're also owned by the same hospital corporation that owns the welding company, that owns the durable medical supply company, that owns the uniform company. And so you go to the uniform company and get your uniforms from them, and that includes the therapist. And you're spending the money and giving them the money back. You're paying them to get a uniform they should probably give you 3 a year for. Are you starting to get the picture yet, folks? And yet you wonder why nurses are mad because we're not paying you these amounts an administrator makes. Baby, we can make more than you. There's nurses I know that made $250,000 last year. Now, we're paying for it. We're paying them now with its inflation rates. But yeah, I've got a friend that made $250,000 last year as a nurse. And he didn't work but 4 days a week. Sometimes just 3. On one contract, it was 3 a week, and he was pulling down $11,000 a week. And if you're in an area of need, you make that kind of money. I just didn't understand where they were getting this kind of money, because I was working in the same healthcare field too, during the same pandemic with the same problems that they were having, and I was getting paid decent, but not that. I wouldn't rob anybody blind. My conscience won't let me. I like making my money. If you offer me a shift at $60 an hour, I am working at $60 an hour. But if I go to that and say, okay, David, look, we really like you. We want you to come back to us. You're a big help to our facility. I say, okay, so what is your company's minimum rate going to be? Because you're going to start dropping prices eventually. Well, our minimum rate's $35. I said, well, I'm not working for anything less than this amount of money. But you know this. So here's my cell phone number, and here's my email. If you need me, send me your dates, and then you tell me when you post them, and I'll go get them, and you can have me that way. And I had that a lot until this last 2 weeks, because I explained what I just explained to y'all. Then they turn around and then they don't give you the shifts, because the company says, we're not having this name and this name and this name and this name. Or here's the best one yet. This is what I absolutely love, because this is going to get folks in trouble. And this is what I want people to start focusing on, especially the healthcare folks listening to me. Pay real close attention to what I'm about to say. I am in the field. I am a per diem agency nurse. I completely know this is true. These long-term care facilities, these corporate offices have got it in their head that it's such a good idea to create their own in-house agency. Quote, I've used that term super loosely. They basically just making you a per diem staff member. Then they say, and we're going to pay you this exorbitant amount of money to come work for us for a limited amount of time, say 12 weeks. But you're going to work the shifts I want you to work. You're going to work when we need you to work. And you're going to get your hours in, and this is what it's going to be. There can't be any call-ins. There can't be any of this. But they still post these same shifts on these per diem agency sites. Now, I knew which buildings it was. I put them on. I'm just going to tell y'all that I did submit to those buildings that I know that that's what they're doing. My shifts were never denied. What they're doing is they've gotten in trouble by these survey teams for understaffing. My thing is, long-term care buildings, listen real close because I'm fixing to spoil your little party. I want a survey or with some big canoodles to walk in the building and look at every Medicare patient on their roster. I want that surveyor to look at every care plan and point out everything out of that care plan on those just Medicaid residents. And then I want them to take what they know, because I want a surveyor to be a nurse. And they'll know by what they write down out of that care plan how much care it takes to take care of that person actually. And then look at their actual staffing numbers. And then look at their census staffing. And when I say that, how many full-time employees you got, how many part-time employees you got. And if they don't meet the criteria, turn around and ask them, how the hell you expect CMS to pay for the residents you got laying in your bed? And you don't even have enough staff member to carry out the simplest procedures in their care plan. I can guarantee you that's going to change the rates. I can guarantee you that's going to change the staffing system that we have now. I can guarantee you if we slip it back to acuity, the FTEs and the PTEs are going to be a real big factor in that. And when I say that, y'all, that's the old model. I've been doing this a long time. That's the old model. It's called full-time employee, part-time employee. And in according to what you got on your census and what the care plan says it is and how critical they are and what their acuity level is, depends on how many full-time employees you need per shift. CMS could fix all they want, all the staffing fixed. That's how you fix it. Here's the problem. Facilities cannot fix that when they've got these exorbitant budgets to pay the CEOs. They got these exorbitant budgets to pay the assistant CEO or CFO or COO or the financial advisors or DONs or whatever it is. Now, DONs, they have a lot of responsibilities. Their title hanging on the wall and everybody in the nursing home works under their license. Hey, we get it. All nurses in the building and CNAs know, they covering our license. So, of course, if they get big money, they get big money. But I'm busting your bubble. It's not fair. Not that it's not fair to me or not fair to another nurse. It's not fair to the nurses you're doing it to. Because I'm going to tell you, the whole point people are actually traveling is that we work at our leisure. The ones like me that do this per diem, contract per diem shift at full time, it's because we work when we want to. We know what it takes for us to live, and that's what we'll work for. Today it may be 60, tomorrow it may be 29. I hadn't seen 29 in 2 years. But you can say all it is a way for you to try to bring back control to your nursing homes. It should be outlawed. That you can't, if you cannot staff your facility, why in the hell are you trying to run an agency in-house, quote unquote? If you ain't got the staff, it's a paradox. It's just another way to get the grant money from the government to staff your building with the same people you won't hire because they want too much money. But this way, we'll suck them in for 12 weeks, and then we're going to tell them you can stay on, but it's not going to be at that rate. Well, if you can afford to pay, an in-house agency can afford to pay $40 an hour, guess how much my rate's going to be? Because if I'm going to put up with your BS, you're going to have to pay me to put up with it. And that's why we work agents. That's why we work per diem. A lot of people that work agency are nurses that can't function. Yeah, I said that right. I'm not taking it back. I know a lot of nurses that work agency because they hop from place to place and they just are lazy. And I'm not talking about like me. I have my days where I'm lazy. Everybody has their days where they're lazy or tired or exhausted and can't really do it. But you feel bad for somebody else because nurses are the biggest codependents in the world. Because we have the biggest hearts in the world. Now, I tell you like it is. But I want CMS to focus on payroll-based journal. I want to see some real tags. I want to see some real tags on these facilities. If you can't staff your nursing home, how are you running an agency to staff your nursing home? It makes no sense, people. Because if they can pay the contractors, if they're paying their regular staff $24, then they can afford to pay an agency person to come in at $40. Why don't they just pay their regular staff $40? You might get to keep your staff. Great thing happened this week, though. I did get a notice from a nurse in the northern Midwest. She said she was at a job fair. She looked over and she said, "Our rates will not be beat," was on the booth. And she went up there, and there was one person there. It said, the job fair started at 2. It went from 2 to 6. We're not going to be here but until 4. They're not coming in and set up until 4 o'clock, and then they're going to be here from 4 to 6. And it's going to be a first come, first serve. She said, well, that's neat. That's good. I'm glad they're doing that. She said, but you might want to stay right here in line. There's only about 4 or 5 people in front of you because if you're not here when they get here, it'll be your loss. She said that was just had captured her attention, so it wasn't but 30 minutes. So she stayed, and they came in and set up. Then she said they set up a black curtain around that booth. And they hung one poster board on the outside that said RN's this rate, LPN's this rate, CNA's this rate. And it was actually what it should be. The catch. That was the only day they were going to hire. You had a 2-hour time frame to get in there. She said she noticed that there were several more people. But when they did this healthcare job fair and put that sign up, none of the other booths had anybody at it. This booth was packed. You know what that tells me they were kind of up to? That tells me that they were kind of up to getting the cream of the crop. Because if you're going to fix a building, if you've got the cream of the crop, it is so easy to do. I did it out west in Arizona. When you get your team together that's really, really good, you can accomplish anything you ask them to do without having to be mean about it and force it and bend it over. But I think I think it was 30, 45, and 50, or 30, 42, and 50, something like that. For the CNAs at 30, the LPNs at 40, 42, 45, whatever it was, and the RNs were like at 48 or 50 or something like that. Those are actually rates. Those are actually good rates. That means they probably had, let's say, 100. And they were only filling for 20 slots, but they had 100 applicants. That means they could go through, do their due diligence, and call and find the cream of the crop in their area. You keep the people home, they're not on the road traveling, and I bet your turnover rate's about nothing. Probably get down to about a 20% turnover rate, because people do different jobs for different things. I will tell y'all that I had a job offer this week. The hourly rate they weren't that great. But for my age, my health problems that I've had, I'm in remission, and I had a small adenocarcinoma on my thyroid. I'm in remission, and I had Graves' disease to go along with it, which has probably caused a little adenocarcinoma. I still did the radiation to kill my thyroid, because I can't be put to sleep because I'm allergic to sedation. But the rate's not that high, but they say we're self-insured, and that caught my attention. I hadn't heard that in years. That the group that comes to this facility to make rounds on their patients is the same group that's on the insurance. So they set aside a time every day in the building for the staff members that need to see the doctor. That some labs are covered. The visit is covered for general care. Folks, throw that even on this place in the upper Midwest up there. You could actually lower these rates by $5 if you have that to offer, and you still gonna get the cream of the crop, right? Because I'm thinking this pay cut. It's pretty significant, but it's not. I can still do a shift here or there on shift key. And it's what appeals to me. But what appeals to me ain't going to appeal to everybody, because they're only caught up in that last money. I'm a realist. I know that I'm sick, and I've got now to have thyroid medicine, and I've got to have my fluid pill, because I retained fluid from all the radiation stuff that I had. And I'd take the propranolol because I had 2 heart attacks while I was doing the radiation stuff for over a period of time, and I have to have the propranolol to make my heart slow down. So that's what I need, right? And I'm not saying I'm the greatest nurse in the world, but damn, they knew how to do it. I'm telling you, that's an idea. That's all I'm saying. Also, CMS needs to look at these nursing homes that have their own agency staff, but they also need to look at everybody that uses the agency staff to see if they have a different incoming packet or orientation packet or employee packet, and if they're on their payroll. If they make them use their time clocks to clock in with saying, oh, it's a verification. That's not what they're doing. They're using the payroll-based journal, having them clock in. And because payroll-based journal the payroll is digitally sent to CMS. So they know how many's in the building. And they'll pull all the information 2 weeks prior to their visit. But if it looks like they're a full-time employee and they pull their file on them and all the stuff's in the file that they look for, then they look like an employee and not an agency person. So they don't get tagged so bad about their staffing. But you can only manipulate this system so long. Right now, to all you long-term care facilities and hospitals that have too many agency people, you got too many per diem shift people going in and out of your buildings. They're airing all of your dirty laundry out there because you're still trying to manipulate the system instead of accepting what's happening. Hey, that's the funniest part, is that nurses in general don't sugarcoat anything. We just don't. They took a lot of people that had good hearts and started out the stuff really good, and we lost it. We lost our sugar coating. Our cane sugar field quit growing cane, so we can't sugarcoat anything. But we just kind of tell it like it is, and people don't like to hear it. But people are going to go out there and work for you. We're going to talk to each other. We always do. But when you're manipulating the system like you do, the hospitals are manipulating the forest by covering up the trees with the forest because they don't want you to know exactly how they're all linked to each other. And that was just a minor example I gave earlier. But that's how it works. Rest assured, that's how it works. Everybody's hands in the pie, but the same hands in the same pie. And even if they're not related to that company, they're related to that person that runs that company or the person that makes that decision. It may be a buddy he went to high school with, and their son runs this business, so he sends the business their way. Well, I'm going to send this business your way, but you're going to have to return some of that back. You're going to have to send us referrals for residents. And that's how they do it. Everybody says, oh, that's networking. Yeah, that's not networking, folks. That's robbing the system. That's why our healthcare costs so damn much now. And now that the news media is kind of getting a hold of what's going on in the healthcare field, they're trying to make heads or tails of it. They're starting to realize that nurses are severely underrated in their responsibility to and I'm going to use a woke quote here, but they are the most underrated people for the people to take care of the woke folks. They've realized, maybe we got this wrong. You did. Nobody's ever going to tell you. Nurses are also under-talked about, underappreciated. And when I say under-talked about, I mean, it doesn't matter that nurses are killing themselves at 16, 17 a day. That don't matter. But don't talk about it, it's not there, right? It's not reported, but regionally reported. If the suicide rates happen, nobody look at the bigger picture here. We don't have a lot of people in the nursing field. We don't have a lot of people in the military either. And we have the 22 projects, and I call them the 22 projects because it's all based on the statistic 22 a day. I sponsor Tell Valhalla project. They help after the fact, and then what they don't do after the fact, they help with as much prevention as they possibly can. And I'm sure all of them do, but the program that I do support is the Tell Valhalla project. They're really, really good. What they do. Go check them out online. Just type it in, Tell Valhalla, or 22 a day. It'll pull them up. 22 a day will pull up a bunch of different sites, but they all have the same mission. It's like the military. You got 5 branches of military, and you got all these individual little platoons. It's the same thing with this 22 a day. Their mission is the same. The public actually puts more emphasis on the doctors and not so much on the nurses. And that's where the problem is. So instead of having you've got this guy that I forgot where he was, walked out to the parking garage to go get something out of his car, killed himself. He disappeared and went and jumped off a bridge. This past Wednesday, a nurse shot herself in the ER where she was working on shift. People, if there's nothing else that comes out of this podcast, I hope it's the fact that you realize that we are killing ourselves. We're killing ourselves for these companies we work for. And when that's not good enough, we're actually physically killing ourselves. And for what? $1. And for what? A way for these CEOs and CFOs to make more money than they need to. If you want to cap nurses' pay, then you need to cap everybody's pay from the top. Oh, let's start with where it starts. Let's cap your pay, the House and the Senate, until you can get a hold to this problem, until you can get a hold to this damn administration. They say it's going to be a wash this fall for the Democrats. They're going to lose. There's like 30 people not rerunning for Congress. Of course there's not. They were alive during Jimmy Carter, just like I was. But for these facilities not to even acknowledge the fact that nurses are committing suicide at a rate almost equivalent to the military, there has to be some similarities there, and there is a ton. And it's funny because after about 2 months into the pandemic and everybody being locked down, man, whoa, y'all was out there in your windows and in your cars, and you were standing there with your mask and your full Tyvek suits on, and y'all were all clapping. We were heroes then. Now what are we, zeros? You're going to claim us to be heroes, and now all of a sudden, if we talk about you need to pay us what we're worth, you're calling us stingy? Baby, I've had a news media personality talk about how nurses and doctors and medical field were the frontline workers, and we were falling on COVID grenades. We were. And we were doing it for the people we care the most about. I went into work every day. I sat in all those meetings where they changed the rules 3 or 4 times a day. I should have saw the big picture then and didn't. We have no problem fighting the battles for you. Pandemic is an example. But what we need right now is for people to stand up and help us fight the battle in our minds. Not necessarily me, but I know there's nurses out there hurting because the facilities don't give a damn about them. And then they make it to where even if you have to take a day off, say you have to take a mental health day for yourself. Oh no. You can't do that. You're putting everybody else at risk. Why? Because you won't hire anybody else or you won't pay anybody else. It's not because you won't hire anybody else. Because we see you hire one and they leave in a week. You hire one and leave in a week. Why? Why is everybody's turnover rate so high? CMS needs to ask those questions. What's your turnover rate high for? Oh, we're at a comparable pay scale. Well, apparently your pay scales ain't working anymore either. You're creating stress in your job, creating stress at their home. And then when somebody does something drastic, then, oh, it's due to the burnout. Well, yeah, keep putting it on us. That don't work alone. The government has screwed up our healthcare delivery model by listening to 2 old dead people. I hate to be so crude about it, but it's true. I've yet to figure out why we got senators and representatives that should be in the nursing home, including our chief executive officer. But y'all don't want to, nobody wants to fix the medical delivery system. Nobody wants to fix nursing. And we're saying it as loud as we can. We want to be recognized, not necessarily for what we do. We just want to be recognized for what we put our bodies through, what we put our minds through for you. And I'm not talking about the general public here, folks. I'm talking about the government. I'm talking about the CEOs. I'm talking about the CFOs. If what I'm hearing is true, you're going to see exactly what a collapsed healthcare system looks like. I try not to say things because I don't want to get in trouble with the boards of nursing. But it's time they realize, too, they're part of the problem. And they know what I'm talking about. And the people that know, the medical healthcare people know exactly what I'm talking about. Y'all have taken license all these years just for anything. Just rip their whole life out from under them. Now, I understand that probably 80% of it's warranted. Y'all have heard me talk about caring nurses. That's where this board is. That's what happened to Redonda Vault. A caring nurse had to call CMS and report it because she felt it was wrong when she found out about it. Yes, she's the savior of everything. I wonder where she's at now. I know what her name is, by the way. I hate that I kind of got tore down today. I apologize for that. I know it's not quite organized as usual. I got off of my subject lines, and I'm sorry about that, but I did get a lot out there. It needs to be out there. This is the best way I know how to tell you. Be very thorough in what you do. If you're looking for a place to put your mother or father or your grandparents or your aunt and uncle or anything like that, tell them you want a list of their corporate offices. You want their websites, then their real website, not the one for the PR campaign. We want the real website. Then go to CMS and do a comparison of all of your nursing homes in your area. Don't just focus on one because the hospital told you that was the best one. Of course, the hospital is going to tell you that's the best one because they're getting profit from it. Do your own research. Be responsible for yourself. Even to the ones listening to this podcast, if you're an older American and you're looking at this might be your future, you better start looking because there's a storm coming, folks. And I'm not talking about a civil war. I mean, there's a storm coming in healthcare. You can't close but so many facilities. And we've reached the point where we've closed enough facilities. We're closing these facilities because it's cheaper on these companies to close them instead of fix them. The very first thing CMS should do is, number one, have these facilities responsible for these buildings, fix the buildings they have operating now. Don't close one, you lose certified beds that way. The hospitals, same thing. The hospitals that won't pay their staff anything, find out why. I say you're not going to get any more funding until you fix the problem you got in this hospital. This staffing better be up to par. Oh, well, they're slow this time of year. Yeah, you do a rotating call off. Because 3/4 of the hours is better than no hours. If you've started, I'll tell you how you can fix this agency thing. There's going to always be travel nurses. Don't get me wrong. There's going to always be travel nurses. But if you want to fix the severity of the travel nurses, change your administrative staff. Pay the staff that's already there what they actually are worth. Because I'm going to tell you, I've been here. I know of whence I am talking. Let me use a big old phrase. My English teacher from high school would be real proud of that. You cannot put a patient in ICU of any kind, any critical care unit of any kind, and give them 2 patients. If you got a 40-bed unit, and you've got one going to the floor, or being discharged to the floor, then you can give them 2 then. But what if another patient comes to that room that needs a one-on-one? So if you got a 40-bed ICU, then you need to have 40 nurses a shift. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about fixing. Not you got a 40-bed ICU, all you get is 20 nurses, you get 2 apiece. Okay, well, what happens when the person's so critical that person can't leave the bedside? Y'all had behind titles such as, oh, they're a 1-to-1. Well, the only time that should be a 1-to-1 is on suicide watch. An ICU of any kind. I mean, after you come out of surgery, you need one nurse sitting there with you to notice any subtle changes. They normally do. You got people that, well, hey, puppy. You've got people that need to know all. You need to find out all this stuff before you go there, because it makes a difference in your care. You have to be a little bit educated. Find a nurse and talk to them. We will educate you now. We're not going to hold back nothing. We're going to give you all the nasty horror stories. And when you get to these hospitals and you get to look at them in, find out from somebody of all these facilities who uses BlackRock and who uses Vanguard for their investments. And you say, well, how does one have to do with the other? Well, BlackRock and Vanguard are investment companies that control their annual budgets more than some third world country. They control your pocketbook too. All politics has done to medicine is absolutely destroy it. All private company and corporations have done is work hand in hand with the lobbyists who advocate their case to the senators, and because they've got the majority of the money, that's why I ask about BlackRock and Vanguard. He who hath the money hath the power. Well, BlackRock and Vanguard are 2 largest investment corporations in the country. They need to be out of the healthcare business too. Healthcare business should be separate from anything else we do. It's fine to have a Department of Health cover it, but you don't need an entire government office just because it socialized medicine in 1964. You don't need a whole office for this. It's get the bullshit out of nursing, get the bullshit out of the medical field, and let's get some real stuff going. I get saving money. Believe you me, I get saving money. I completely understand it. Anybody that's got any good sense knows we're going to save money. Hell, we try to save money while we're working, because that may be our little pizzly 2% raise this next year, but it's still our 2% raise. You know, that's a joke. Private companies are a joke in healthcare. There ain't a good one out there. I don't care if it is a good one. I actually loved where I had all my radiation and stuff done. I thought they were absolutely freaking great, but they're not, because they do the same thing everybody else does. They're just better at hiding it. They hire people that, they pay. I get it. But believe you me, before all this is over with, you're going to have to get it, and you're going to have to understand it, because if you don't understand it, you're never going to see the trees in the forest so you'll be able to separate the forest from the trees. This is David from Ridge Runner Studios in Hardy, Arkansas. Have a great week.